Does
That's
anyone
right.
know that? No, up on here. Oh.
What?
My brother CJ was a Chippendales dancer, and I have pictures to prove it. Yes?
I worked at Chippendales in Culver City in about 84, 85.
That's pretty cool.
He's so gorgeous.
So I have two more questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. CJ, talk about the underwater scene and how that was filmed.
We filmed that back at LA, and we used an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They dropped a black felt around it to give it that darkness. They put all my safety divers in 1/4 inch, if I recall, wetsuits. They dropped me down in just normal wardrobe. That's a real chain around my neck, and they stood me on a center block 20 feet down. And as you look at the chain, you can see it's actually on, and Kane knows from experience that you don't, but he does. From experience that all I could do was, I was screwed if I didn't get air. So when you signal to your safety divers to come in, they would actually just pull my mask up and show a regulator in my mouth. And then the safety divers started to complain about being cold, and eventually they pulled me up to the surface and said, it's time to get out, are you okay? Because the safety divers are getting cold. And once your body gets to a certain numbness, it's like, I'm fine. And we went down several times and finished a shot that night. They started bringing me up every little bit just to look over the edge so I could see a small monitor to see how it looked and how we could twist a little bit. And Tom went down there actually, the young man who played Tommy Jarvis, who played, Tommy Matthews is his name, played Tommy Jarvis. He went down and he did some of his own scenes before the stuntman came down for some of the longer scenes to work with me. So kudos to him because he was down there with me for quite a bit of time. But it was interesting with that chain around your neck, and it kept me down between that and standing on the center block. Just kept me off the bottom enough so we could do the scene upward shot, so you couldn't see anything above the ground, above the water.
Kane, was yours similar?
Well, mine was, we shot for about 4 weeks in Los Angeles to do all the interiors of the film. Then we went to Bay Minette, Alabama, and shot all the exteriors for the next month. The last 2 days of shooting were the underwater things for the beginning of my film to match the end of his. And I even had the same kind of gloves on at the very beginning underwater that you ended with. And then they tried to make it look like I had been under there so long that the gloves rotted off and everything. I'm not sure if that was really conveyed, but the last 2 days of shooting, I was already pretty exhausted, and I put all the makeup on. It's foam latex, the entire bodysuit, all the way to my ankles, foam latex, and Beekler said, jump in, and I jumped in and went, floated right on top, because foam latex is so full of air bubbles. So they're like, oh shit, we thought you were gonna sink. And I said, no, I'm not. So the safety divers had to take and attach a cable on the bottom of the pool. We were in a pool also, diving pool where they teach scuba diving and stuff. They put a cable attached to the bottom and then looped it around my ankle, because when I would go underwater, I would stay perfectly upright because I wanted so badly to float up and then do this. So they held my ankle down, and I went under with the regulator like CJ had with the safety divers, and I would breathe while I could hear. I don't know if you had.
Hear the camera.
No, I could hear I could hear Beekler speaking outside of the pool. He spoke on a mic, and I could hear underwater perfectly.
Oh, I couldn't. Because it was an Olympic pool 20 feet down, but I could hear the camera tick, 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 tick. When I heard the camera, it was time to act, and they just kept it running until I needed air.
Oh, wow. Well, I just was able to hear Beekler say, okay, we're ready, we're rolling. They'd come in, take my regulator, I'd put the mask on, pose, do the thing. Sometimes the shots were really long, panning shots down the chain, down to what appeared to be the rock and everything. And so it took 2 days to shoot all that underwater stuff. And a couple times I felt like I had to call the divers in because I was running out of air, because if you don't get that regulator back, you're screwed, because I'm attached. He was held down by the chain. My chain was plastic, but I was attached by my ankle. So if you look closely, I think in the film you can see when they pan down, you can see the cable on the side of my leg. But it was a very difficult way to end shooting. And I had recently at a convention had somebody say that they went to where we shot all the exteriors of the movie, and it's like a tourist attraction now. And part of the pier is still there supposedly, and they have a tour guide that says, okay, right in this area of the lake is where Kane did all the underwater stuff. And I'm like,
They said Kane or Jason?
they said me.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. This is where he was underwater doing all the shots, and I'm like, oh, I hate to tell you, that was in a pool. It wasn't anywhere near the lake. Then he said, well, they said when you stand up out of the water and first take that breath and the camera's behind, you see my spine and everything. They said that happened right over here at the lake, and I'm like, oh boy, you're getting some bad information, because that was done in pickup shots in Los Angeles, and I was standing in 2 inches of water. When I stand up out of that water, they roll the camera and they throw a bucket of water on me, and then I stand up so it's all dripping off. But I wasn't even in water. So it's interesting how they get misconceptions and try and, profit off of something that wasn't even accurate.
Like Steve.
All right, we have time for a couple questions from the audience. Who has a question for each gentleman?
Yes, he does have Chippendale's pictures. Oh.
We all know, and Kane, I have a feeling after reading your book that your answer is going to be nothing, so that's a prediction. We all know what an amazing job you do scaring people. What are each one of you afraid of?
Nothing.
I'm afraid of Steve.
Everybody's afraid of Steve. He's fucking live wire. I've always said nothing, and it's because, none of the typical things. But I recently did a thing with Adam Green called Scary Sleepover, not too recently, and he asked me, he said, seriously, try and tell me something that actually scares you. And I thought, man, I've tried so many interviews, and I was actually, at this point in my life, able to come up with something. And it's not a fun answer, and it's not gonna give people laughter or anything like that, but I was able to finally come up with something that scares me, and it's dementia.
I have that, it's not bad.
I think that's a very frightening thing to imagine, living with someone your entire life, and you get to the point where you don't recognize them. That's fucking terrifying.
That's my wife, she's over there, she said, I don't recognize her half the time. Right, man?
So I, to be honest, I mean, weren't you on a paranormal show for a while?
Yeah. Well, I did an episode.
An episode, Ghost Adventures. That shit scares me because it's the unknown. What I can't control, because I can fuck you all up. I can control that. Right? But I can't
As a
control,
group, he will too.
as something like that I can't control and see and touch. Again, I'm here if it's true or that. That's scary shit.
And that's why I've always had that interest, and that's why this is my ghost hunting group. You guys probably know Hollywood Ghost Hunters. Has people that, everyone in the group has something to do with making horror films. So I thought it was an interesting group of people to go on official investigations. And we've gone all over the world to most of the classic places. And it doesn't scare me, but it really interests me. And I want something to happen just so I can experience
Be
that.
scared.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. And unfortunately, I think there's a huge factor of exaggeration when people do paranormal investigating. And sometimes I think it's even inadvertent. They want to have a story. So the smallest incident that happens, they almost unconsciously make it into something more than it is. And I'm very, very careful about making sure it's something that couldn't have another answer to it.